Greetings, everyone. Have you ever had an unexpected experience that ultimately changed the direction of your life? Sometimes we only see the significance years later. Other times the change is drastic and we know right away something special is happening here. Often we are surprised. We are not seeking that experience, but nonetheless it happened. Perhaps we need to pay more attention to those events. Welcome to my podcast, A Psychologist Looks at Scripture. I am Peter Doherty, a Catholic priest and a psychologist. I draw on my training in psychology and scripture studies to offer unique insights into the Gospels and explore innovative pastoral teachings for Christians. The Gospels provide a wealth of knowledge about God and the evolution of our spirituality, and there's always more to discover. My podcasts typically last between 7 to 10 minutes, during which I share reflections and insights that I hope will be beneficial to you. I welcome your questions and comments. Your feedback is always invaluable. In today's podcast, we will examine Luke chapter 5, verse 1 to 11, which will be read on Sunday, February the 9th, 2025. There are a few points I want to focus on, as they can be helpful in the development of our spirituality. This passage recounts the calling of Simon Peter and his fishing partners, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. The narrative begins simply. Jesus enters Peter's fishing boat. We can only speculate about Peter's reaction to this unexpected visitor, whether it was curiosity, respect, or uncertainty. Despite having the option to ask Jesus to leave or even throw him overboard, Peter remained silent. Perhaps he was fatigued from a long and fruitless night of fishing. Although we do not know how long Jesus preached or how Peter felt about being asked to fish again, Peter expresses his reservations, yet ultimately agrees to set out again to fish. This openness leads to an extraordinary catch that nearly sinks their boats, an event reminiscent of the wedding feast of Cana, where God's grace abounds. Peter is understandably overwhelmed by what he witnesses. He recognizes Jesus' holiness despite labeling himself as a sinful man. Notably, Jesus is unfazed by Peter's self-criticism. Instead, he focuses on Peter's hospitality and willingness to follow his call. This humility positions Peter as an excellent candidate for discipleship. James and John likely listened attentively alongside Peter and were inspired enough to leave everything behind in this pivotal moment. Maybe they came back to their boats. They had responsibility to their families. Maybe they didn't, and literally left everything to follow Jesus. Jesus clarifies that Peter's mission will involve guiding others towards a deeper relationship with God. While his description is brief, it acknowledges that Peter has years ahead to grow in understanding of his ministry. The call of Peter and the other disciples illustrates God's invitation for us to follow him. Despite his initial reluctance and desire to return home after a long night of fishing, Peter allows Jesus into his boat. This kind of openness is crucial for our own spiritual growth. I want to emphasize the moment when Jesus asked Peter to lower his net for a catch. This serves as both a literal task and a metaphor for spiritual growth. I'm sure you've heard the saying, 80% of success is showing up. This is attributed to Woody Allen, the American filmmaker and actor, which encapsulates the importance of taking the first step towards personal or spiritual growth. By simply showing up despite his doubts, Peter exemplifies the openness necessary for spiritual development. Are we willing to go beyond our comfort zone? Conversely, the Pharisees often face criticism for their hypocrisy. However, their complacency illustrates a deeper issue. They ceased seeking growth because they felt they had enough. One of my mottos is, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. This is attributed to the American humorist and journalist Finley Peter Dunne. This sentiment explains why Jesus frequently challenged those who had become too comfortable in their wealth and power. As a therapist, I sometimes challenge clients to confront issues they may be ignoring, issues that negatively impact their lives. Although initially comfortable, I make them uncomfortable. I help them realize the necessity of addressing these difficult matters over time. The overarching message here is that we must be willing to step beyond our comfort zones to foster spiritual growth. Additionally, Jesus asked Peter, a seasoned fisherman, to engage in an activity he has performed countless times, fishing. This everyday event becomes a vehicle not only for revealing Jesus' identity, but it also foreshadows a purpose in Peter's life. It would be wise to re-examine our daily routines to determine if they can tell us anything about God's will in our lives. Thank you for listening. Join me next week when we explore another gospel passage from Luke, where we can listen to the Beatitudes and the wisdom that's being offered to us. If this is the first time tuning in, I encourage you to explore previous episodes available on various podcast platforms and YouTube. New episodes are released every Sunday, focusing on the upcoming week's gospel. Your feedback is invaluable for improving this podcast. I also want to express my gratitude to my team members, Heather Patel-Doherty and Ruju Coulomb, who play an essential role in preparing this podcast. For any questions or concern, please reach out to me via email, peter.doherty, DOHERTYOMI, @gmail.com. God bless you and have a great week.